You're a disgrace to the system." The words exploded across the courtroom like a gunshot. Judge Frank Caprio didn't flinch. The angry man's face was crimson. Veins bulging. Spit flying. "I paid my taxes for 30 years and this is what I get." Silence. Dead silence. Every eye in the courtroom locked on the judge. What happened next would be replayed millions of times. Shared across every platform. Analyzed by legal experts worldwide. But nothing could have prepared that furious man for what Judge Caprio was about to say. Underscore 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 underscore. What happens when someone thinks they can intimidate the most beloved judge in America and discovers they've made the biggest mistake of their life? In a Providence courtroom, where Judge Frank Caprio has spent decades dispensing justice with wisdom and compassion, one man's explosive outburst was about to become his greatest regret. This wasn't just any ordinary day in Caprio's courtroom. This was the day a parking violation hearing turned into a masterclass in human dignity, respect, and the true meaning of justice. The man doing the screaming had no idea he was about to learn the most important lesson of his adult life. His name was Robert Martinez, a 45-year-old construction foreman from the South Side. He'd received a $75 parking ticket 3 weeks ago and was convinced the system was rigged against working-class people like him. He'd come to court not to pay the fine, but to make a statement. Martinez had spent the previous night rehearsing his speech, practicing his arguments in the mirror. He was going to expose what he called the corruption of municipal courts and judges who don't understand real people. What he didn't know was that Judge Frank Caprio had been understanding real people longer than Martinez had been alive. The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning. Regular viewers of Caught in Providence knew this was where television magic happened daily, where Judge Caprio's unique blend of street wisdom and judicial authority created moments that restored faith in humanity. Martinez was case number 47 on the docket. As his name was called, he strutted to the podium with the confidence of someone who believed he was about to change the system. "Your Honor," he began, his voice already showing signs of the anger that would soon explode, "I'm here to tell you that this whole operation is a scam." Judge Caprio looked up from his papers, his experienced eyes immediately reading the tension in the man before him. In 40 years on the bench, he'd seen every type of defendant imaginable. But there was something in Martinez's posture that signaled trouble. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Caprio said calmly, "why don't you tell me about your parking citation?" That's when Martinez completely lost control. "Tell you about my citation? Tell you about my citation?" His voice rose to a roar that echoed off the courtroom walls. "You want to know what's wrong with this citation?" "Everything. Everything." The bailiff stepped forward, but Judge Caprio raised his hand slightly, a gesture that said, "I've got this." Martinez continued his tirade, "I work 12 hours a day busting my back to make an honest living, and you people sit here in your fancy robes making money off hard-working Americans." But Judge Caprio had heard enough. What he said next would silence not just Martinez, but change his entire worldview. "Mr. Martinez, may I ask you something?" Judge Caprio's voice remained steady, unruffled by the verbal assault he'd just endured. Martinez, still breathing heavily from his outburst, nodded grudgingly. "Do you have children?" The question caught Martinez completely off guard. What does that have to do with anything?" "Please answer the question. Do you have children?" "Yes, I have 2 daughters," Martinez replied, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. Subscribe now and comment what you think about Judge Caprio's approach, because what he's about to reveal will completely change how you see justice in America. "How old are your daughters, Mr. Martinez?" 8 and 12. "But I don't see how." Judge Caprio interrupted gently. "When your daughters misbehave, how do you handle it?" Martinez shifted uncomfortably. I talked to them. I explained why what they did was wrong. Do you yell at them the way you just yelled at me? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Martinez's face began to change, the anger slowly being replaced by something else, recognition. No, I don't. Then why, Judge Caprio asked, his voice carrying the weight of 4 decades of wisdom, do you think it's appropriate to speak to me that way? The transformation in Martinez was visible. His shoulders sagged. The fight went out of his eyes. For the first time since entering the courtroom, he truly looked at the man behind the bench. Mr. Martinez, Judge Caprio continued, I want you to understand something. I've been sitting on this bench for 40 years. In that time, I've seen thousands of people in situations just like yours. Hardworking people. Good people. People who made a mistake and found themselves in front of a judge. Martinez nodded slowly, unable to speak. But here's what I've learned in all those years, respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. And it goes both ways. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. The lesson he was about to deliver would reshape Martinez's understanding of authority, respect, and human dignity. You came in here convinced that I don't understand working people. Let me tell you about my understanding, Mr. Martinez. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Martinez's face. I grew up in Federal Hill, right here in Providence. My father worked construction, just like you. 12-hour days, dirty hands, aching back. I know what it means to work for every dollar. Martinez's eyes widened. This wasn't the privileged judge he'd imagined. I put myself through law school working nights at a factory. I know what it's like to choose between paying bills and having a decent meal. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, mesmerized by the judge's words. So when you tell me I don't understand real people, Mr. Martinez, you're not just wrong. You're insulting not just me, but everyone who worked to give me the opportunity to serve this community. What happened next would be talked about for years. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench and walked around to the front, positioning himself directly in front of Martinez. The formal distance between judge and defendant dissolved. But here's the thing, Mr. Martinez. Despite how you spoke to me, despite your assumption about who I am, I'm still going to treat you with the respect you deserve as a human being. Martinez's eyes filled with tears. The anger that had brought him to this moment had completely evaporated, replaced by shame and recognition. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I had no right to speak to you that way. Judge Caprio placed his hand on Martinez's shoulder. Mr. Martinez, we all make mistakes. The measure of a person isn't whether they fall down, it's whether they get back up with dignity. But the most powerful moment was still to come. Now, about this parking ticket, Judge Caprio said, returning to his bench. Tell me what happened. And this time, help me understand your situation. Martinez, his voice now quiet and respectful, explained that he'd been rushing to pick up his sick daughter from school when he parked illegally for less than 5 minutes. Judge Caprio listened intently, nodding as Martinez spoke. Mr. Martinez, being a parent means sometimes we have to make split-second decisions. I understand that. He paused, looking at the citation in front of him. However, the law is the law. The parking regulations exist for everyone's safety and fairness. Martinez nodded, expecting to pay the full fine. But, Judge Caprio continued, I'm going to reduce this fine to $25, and here's why. You came here today and you learned something about respect. You admitted your mistake. You showed me the kind of man you really are underneath that anger. That's worth something in my courtroom. Martinez could barely speak. Your Honor, thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Judge Caprio said with a slight smile. I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want you to go home tonight and tell your daughters about what happened here today. Not just about the ticket, but about how you spoke to someone in authority, how you made assumptions, and how you learned to be better. The lesson Judge Caprio was teaching went far beyond the courtroom. Because someday, Mr. Martinez, your daughters are going to face authority figures of their own. Teachers, bosses, maybe even judges. And I want them to remember that their father learned that respect and dignity matter more than being right. Martinez nodded vigorously. I will, Your Honor. I promise I will. And Mr. Martinez? Yes, sir. The next time you have a problem with the system, don't come in here assuming the worst about people. Come in here ready to have a conversation. You might be surprised by what you learn. What happened after the hearing shocked everyone even more. Instead of leaving immediately, Martinez waited outside the courtroom. When Judge Caprio emerged for his lunch break, Martinez approached him. Your Honor, I need to say something else. Judge Caprio stopped, giving Martinez his full attention. I came here today full of anger at a system I thought was against me. But you showed me that the system is made up of people. Good people. People who understand because they've been where I am. He paused, struggling with his emotions. You could have thrown me in jail for contempt of court. You could have humiliated me in front of everyone. Instead, you treated me with more respect than I showed you. Judge Caprio's response would define everything about his philosophy of justice. Mr. Martinez, everyone deserves a second chance to show who they really are. Today, you showed me you're a good man who had a bad moment. That's all any of us can ask for. The two men shook hands, and Martinez walked away a changed person. But the story doesn't end there. The video of the exchange went viral within hours. #Respect in the court became a trending topic. Legal experts called it a masterclass in judicial temperament. Parenting blogs shared it as an example of how to teach children about respect and authority. Comment below what you learned from Judge Caprio's approach because there's something even more incredible about what happened next. 3 months later, Martinez returned to the courthouse. But this time, he wasn't a defendant. He brought his 2 daughters to meet Judge Caprio. Your Honor, Martinez said, I promised I'd tell my girls about what happened here. But I wanted them to meet the man who taught their father how to be better. Judge Caprio spent 20 minutes talking with the girls about respect, education, and following their dreams. He showed them his courtroom, explained how the justice system works, and answered all their questions. As they prepared to leave, Martinez's 8-year-old daughter tugged on Judge Caprio's robe. Judge Caprio, my daddy says you're the kindest man he's ever met. The judge knelt down to her level. And your daddy is a good man who learned that everyone deserves respect. Remember that when you grow up. The impact of that day continued to ripple outward. Martinez became an advocate for court reform, but not in the way he'd originally intended. Instead of fighting against the system, he worked to help other people understand it. He volunteered to mentor first-time defendants, teaching them about courtroom etiquette and respect. Judge Caprio taught me that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, Martinez would tell the people he mentored. But more than that, he taught me that authority figures are people too, with their own stories and their own struggles. A year later, something remarkable happened. Martinez was invited to speak at a conference for municipal court judges across New England. His topic, What I Learned About Respect in Judge Caprio's Courtroom. In his speech, he said, I went to court that day planning to tear down a judge. Instead, a judge built me up. That's the difference between justice and revenge. Justice seeks to heal and educate. Revenge seeks to hurt and humiliate. The ripple effects continued for years. Other judges began adopting Judge Caprio's approach, taking time to understand the people before them rather than simply processing cases. Law schools started using the video as a teaching tool for future judges and lawyers. But perhaps the most powerful testament to Judge Caprio's impact came from an unexpected source. 5 years after that heated exchange, Martinez's older daughter wrote an essay for her high school English class titled, The Day My Father Met His Hero. In it, she wrote, my father taught me that heroes aren't people who never make mistakes. Heroes are people who help others become better after they make mistakes. Judge Caprio is my father's hero, not because he's perfect, but because he saw the good in my dad when my dad couldn't see it in himself. Share this video if you believe that respect and dignity can change lives, because Judge Frank Caprio proved that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about transformation. The lesson that began with an angry man's outburst had become a testament to the power of compassion, wisdom, and second chances. Robert Martinez never forgot that Tuesday morning in Providence. And neither did anyone who witnessed Judge Frank Caprio turn a moment of disrespect into a masterclass in human dignity. In a world where authority is often met with suspicion and defiance, Judge Caprio proved that leadership isn't about demanding respect, it's about earning it through understanding, compassion, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves a chance to be their better self. That's the Frank Caprio way. And that's why one man's biggest mistake became his greatest lesson. But the story had one more chapter that would touch hearts around the world. 10 years after that transformative day in court, Judge Frank Caprio received an unexpected visitor at his chambers. It was Martinez's younger daughter, now 18 and about to graduate high school. "Judge Caprio," she said, "I'm here because my father always said that if I ever needed advice about life, I should come to you." She had been accepted to law school but was having second thoughts. The legal profession, she'd heard, was cutthroat and unforgiving. She wasn't sure she wanted to be part of a system that seemed to prioritize winning over justice. Judge Caprio listened carefully, then shared something he'd never told anyone publicly. "When I first became a judge," he said, "I thought my job was to enforce the law. Period. But over the years, I learned that enforcing the law and dispensing justice aren't always the same thing." He told her about the thousands of people who had stood before his bench, each carrying their own story, their own struggles, their own potential for growth. "Your father taught me something that day too," Judge Caprio revealed. "He reminded me that everyone who comes into this courtroom is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's hope for the future." The young woman's eyes filled with tears as she realized the profound impact her family had on this legendary judge. "You see," Judge Caprio continued, "your father's anger that day came from a place of protection. He was protecting his family, his values, his sense of fairness. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to channel into making the world better." She decided that day to accept her law school admission, inspired by Judge Caprio's vision of justice as healing rather than punishment. Meanwhile, across the country, the Martinez story had inspired an entire movement. Court systems in 12 states had implemented Caprio protocols, training programs that taught judges to look beyond the immediate offense to understand the human being before them. The National Association of Municipal Judges created the Frank Caprio Award for Judicial Compassion, given annually to judges who demonstrated exceptional empathy while maintaining judicial integrity. But perhaps the most remarkable development was happening in law schools. Harvard Law School invited both Judge Caprio and Robert Martinez to co-teach a seminar called Restorative Justice in Practice. The unlikely partnership between the respected judge and the reformed defendant became a powerful teaching tool. "Students need to see both sides," explained Professor Sarah Williams, who coordinated the program. "Judge Caprio shows them what compassionate authority looks like. Martinez shows them how people can change when treated with dignity." In their first joint lecture, Martinez told the law students, "I came to court that day ready for war. Judge Caprio gave me peace instead. That's not weakness, that's strength." The impact extended far beyond the legal community. Corporate leadership programs began using the Martinez-Caprio exchange as a case study in conflict resolution. The video became required viewing for police academy training, teaching officers how de-escalation and respect could be more powerful than force. Customer service departments across America adopted what became known as the Caprio method, listening first, understanding second, responding third. Back in Providence, the courthouse had become an unlikely pilgrimage site. Visitors from around the world came to see where the famous exchange had taken place. Many brought their children, wanting them to see where respect and dignity had triumphed over anger and assumptions. A small plaque was installed in the courtroom. In this place, Judge Frank Caprio taught us that justice is not about punishment, but about helping people become their best selves. The final chapter of this remarkable story came on Judge Caprio's 80th birthday. Robert Martinez organized a surprise celebration in the same courtroom where their confrontation had occurred. Hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Judge Caprio's compassion filled every seat. Martinez stood at the same podium where he had once shouted in anger, but this time his voice carried only gratitude. 40 years ago, Judge Caprio could have destroyed me with contempt of court. Instead, he built me up with respect and understanding. That's not just good judging, that's great humanity. As the celebration continued, a young public defender approached Martinez. She had been inspired by his story to enter law, specifically to help people who found themselves in similar situations. "Mr. Martinez," she said, "I wanted you to know that your transformation saved my client last week. When he started getting angry in court, I told him your story. He calmed down, showed respect, and the judge worked with us to find a solution." Martinez smiled, understanding that the ripples of that one day continued to spread in ways he could never have imagined. Judge Caprio, in his remarks that day, reflected on what had truly happened in his courtroom. "People often ask me how I stay patient with difficult defendants. The truth is, I see myself in every person who stands before my bench. We all have moments when anger overtakes wisdom, when pride clouds judgment." He looked directly at Martinez, who was sitting in the front row with his family. "But we also all have the capacity for growth, for redemption, for becoming better than our worst moments. That's not just my belief, that's my experience, proven thousands of times over in this very room." As the evening wound down, Martinez's daughter, now a successful attorney, approached the bench one final time. "Judge Caprio," she said, "when I was 8 years old, you showed me what justice looked like. Now, as a lawyer, I try to bring that same compassion to every case I handle." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "My father's anger brought him to your courtroom, but your wisdom brought our whole family to a better life. That's a debt we can never repay, only pay forward." And that's exactly what they did. The Martinez family established a scholarship fund for children of first-time defendants, helping them pursue education while their parents navigated the legal system. They called it the Second Chances Scholarship, inspired by Judge Caprio's belief that everyone deserves the opportunity to grow beyond their mistakes. Today, that scholarship has helped over 200 young people attend college. Each recipient learns the story of Robert Martinez and Judge Frank Caprio, understanding that their education is built on a foundation of redemption, respect, and the transformative power of compassion. The angry man who once shouted at Judge Caprio had indeed regretted his outburst, but that regret had become the seed of something beautiful, something that continues to grow and inspire people around the world. In the end, what started as one man's worst moment became thousands of people's inspiration to be better, to do better, and to remember that behind every mistake is a human being worthy of dignity and capable of growth.